Hello, dear friends. Namaskar. Shalom. Welcome to Asian Center for Creative Theology. Today we continue with the contemplative lab sessions on world scripture. And I'd like to share with you a particularly interesting and also one of my favorite texts. Comes from the Japanese Zen master by the name of Dogen Zenji from 12th century Japan. And this particular text is from a corpus that Dogen Zenji wrote, and that collection of writings is known as Shobogenzo, or translated as Treasury of the True Dharma Eye. In Chinese, it's 正法眼藏 Shobogenzo. And Shobogenzo is a well-loved text, especially among Zen Buddhists. And it's known for its profound poetic insights and have been studied by academics as well. So the particular text that I would like to share today from the Shobogenzo is in chapter 3, I think. Yes, chapter 3, actualizing the fundamental point. And within chapter 3, we have a number of poetic verses. And this particular one is called Genjo-koan. Genjo-koan. And I'll read the English translation of the Genjo-koan. It goes like this. To study the way of enlightenment, study the self. To study the self is to forget the self. To forget the self is to be actualized by myriad things. When actualized by myriad things, your body and mind, as well as the bodies and minds of others, drop away. No trace of enlightenment remains, and this no trace continues endlessly. So in this particular text, Dogen Zenji speaks about enlightenment. He speaks about it as not something esoteric or far away, but intimate and direct. For he says, to study the way of enlightenment, that is to study the self, which brings enlightenment back to your direct, moment by moment experience of who you are. And he goes on to say that to study the self is to forget the self, to forget the self, which suggests an insight into the constructed nature of what we call the self. It suggests an understanding that, in essence, who we are is not a self, so to speak, not an inherent, solid, unchanging self. And the best way to study this so-called self is to forget it. It's to go beyond what we think we are. He goes on to say, to forget the self is to be actualized by myriad things. Or some translations describe it as actualized by the 10,000 things. One Wu in Chinese. To forget yourself, to forget the selves, to be actualized by the 10,000 things. What does it mean here? Well, if the self as a concrete, autonomous, independent entity does not really exist, and what does exist is the interpenetrating field of connections that what we call the self is made up of 10,000 things. For example, when we breathe air into our bodies, the air becomes part of us. We eat food, food becomes part of us. And so for the 10,000 things are, if you like, the very matrix of our being. We do not exist independent of everything else. We exist as a coalescence, an assembly of interdependent, inter-arising, interpenetrating factors in the environment. So this goes into the very heart of the Buddhist insight into interbeing, interdependent existence. And Dogen goes on to say, when actualized by myriad things, your body and mind, as well as the bodies and minds of others, are away. The Japanese word for this is Shinjin Datsuraku, Sensing Tolo, means the body and mind dropping away. It suggests a moment of deep penetrative insight into the complete release of grasping of the mind. The mind no longer clings to its own identity formation. It no longer identifies with this finite body and mind, which is nothing other than a field of perceptions, sensations, and feelings, and thinking, and that is made up of, composed of nothing other than the experience of what we call the world. So the body, mind, and world are not separate entities. They are all one and the same reality of our conscious, seamless experience. So for the body and mind, our own body and mind to drop away, and the bodies and minds of others to drop away, means that our frozen concepts of who we think we are and who we think others are fall away, penetrate into that emptiness of false inherent identity. And then finally he says, no trace of enlightenment remains, and this no trace continues endlessly. So when the mind is melted into the white fire of awareness, freed of all its limited identifications and conceptualizations of grasping and clinging, what remains is enlightened awareness. But even enlightened awareness is not clung to or identified as something inherently real, as if it is the basis of our true identity. In other words, there is non-clinging all the way through without any end. So no trace of enlightenment remains. This no trace continues endlessly. Awareness is not something special and esoteric, but awareness is really who we are. And this awareness, once fully unveiled, is intimately and inextricably one with every moment of our day-to-day experience. There is no trace, no smell of so-called enlightenment left. And that is true enlightenment. So there you have it. Shobogenzo from Dogen Zenji, and this particular text that I've selected from Shobogenzo is called Genjo-koan. Now I'll read it again for your meditative pleasure. To study the way of enlightenment is to study the self. To study the self is to forget the self. To forget the self is to be actualized by the 10,000 things. When actualized by the 10,000 things, your body and mind, as well as the bodies and minds of others, drop away. Shinjin Datturaku. No trace of enlightenment remains, and this no trace continues endlessly. Oh, what beauty! May you all experience Shinjin Datturaku, dropping away of body and mind, and rest in the pure, pristine radiance of awareness. Nothing special, and yet is the highest joy of our being. Thank you all. Thank you for listening and for meditating along with me and with Dogen Zenji in this profound text, profound uh, verse, Genjo-koan. May you be well, may you be whole. Namaskar, Om Shanti, and Shalom. See you again next time.